Trigger warning. This episode contains content about cancer and suicide. Yo, from Signal Flow Studios, you are listening to the Featured Presentation Podcast, where I interview the featured artists on my newest song. Who am I, you might ask? Well, I'm singer, songwriter, producer, rapper ZuP from Cleveland, Ohio. I've been in the Cleveland music scene for what feels like forever, and my most recent album, For Me, won Scene Magazine's Best Local Album of 2023. But enough about me. Today, we are going to be talking about a song from the aforementioned album, For Me. We're doing things a little bit different. The song is called Control. It is produced by Phenom, and it features one of my favorite human beings sitting across from me right now. Make some noise for Veeno.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. It's a great compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you are. You're for sure one of my favorite people on this planet. And so...
You're one of my favorite people, too.
Oh, thanks, man. So for the people that might not know who you are and want to know why you're one of my favorite people on the planet, give yourself a little introduction. Tell these people about you.
Well, my name is Veeno. Real name is Vincent. I figured I'd like to just throw that out there, just make it a little bit more personal, but yeah, throwing the government out there. But, I started making music probably around 2007, more of like kind of just like chilling in the basement, you know. Me and you have talked about that too. You told me how you started like with the closet in your parents' house, and you know, it was kind of just like we had like a stage mic and we had Fruity Loops, and we had, I forgot what we even recorded with, but, you know, it was just me and, you know, a couple of my friends, and we just, you know, made a couple songs on some beats my buddy made in Fruity Loops, and that's kind of like what started it, and I didn't really take it too seriously. It's like one of these things you just kind of hang out, we're just drinking, smoking, you know, playing cards, having a good time. Oh, let's make a couple rap songs. Like one of those kind of things, you know, and like we didn't really like go out and perform or anything, but like that was during the Myspace days. I'm gonna take it back.
Hell yeah.
To the Myspace days where you had like you created like your own Myspace music page.
Yeah, and then you could put it like at one point you could like add it to your personal page's profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so lit, man.
I was just about to say that was lit.
But yeah, so that's kind of like what I did for a while. And actually before even that, I'll go way back. So like in 2006, I would say maybe like 2005 or 4-ish, maybe even like whenever MySpace really hit, like me and a few of my friends would go on to like the message board. We had like a group and a message board. We'd go on there and we'd write like raps, like, you know, going against each other.
Oh, you were battling on the message boards.
Yeah, but it was all in good fun. Like it wasn't even really like battling though. It was just kind of like, all right, who can write the most like witty line, or like, you know, who could top like the way that, you know, so and so ended this verse. So
right.
It was kind of like more of that, like, oh, they did this, okay, now let me do my thing, you know. So that's kind of like how it really started. And then, you know, it started in the basement. You know, and I just did like recording on and off, you know, probably until like, I'd say maybe 2009 or 10 is when I really like personally started to kind of take it seriously, which sucks, but is good because like I did get to that point where like I did start to take it seriously, but yeah. I'm kind of like, you know, I look back, I don't have regrets, but I look back at myself and I'm just like, man, I wish I could have like took it a little bit more seriously earlier on. And like, you know, and one thing I always struggled with was just like confidence when it came to like doing that. Cause I never really like, I was good with poetry in high school. I liked writing a lot. I liked writing stories. Whenever they put me in like in school suspension, you'd have to remember, you get all your work done in like an hour or two. And then you'd have like the entire day and it would be so boring. There were times I would sit there and I would just write like stories about me and my friends, like just make them up. And cause I was like just that bored, but I love doing that, like just making up a story and, you know, and kind of like, you know, I was very like particular with like my punctuation too. Whenever I got something wrong back on like an English paper, I'm like, damn, how did I miss that?
Ruined your day. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's how it really started. And then, I think like 2010, like 2011-ish, I started really buying like beats from like local producers and stuff. You know, I got hip to, you know, Debunk. He was a producer I bought a lot of beats off of back in, that time frame. And
Yeah, he was on fire back then.
oh yeah, and he had like a very unique sound too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I remember I forgot someone it might have been you or maybe Brad or someone said like he has just such a unique sound when you hear it. Like it's like you instantly can tell.
Yeah.
I think it was like the synths or something about it. I forgot what it was, but yeah. And then I started putting a project together. I did a mixtape called Riding Around the City. I released that in 2011. Yeah, I released that January 2011. And then I released a follow-up in August of 2012, which was another mixtape. Had a couple original beats on that one. But then I really released my album, Myself As I Know It. It had all original beats in August of 2013. So by that point, I had met you. We had worked together.
Yeah.
I've gotten beats. It was funny because, like, I remember when I was, like, first looking for beats, I hit up Nero. And I'm like, hey, dude, because I knew he had, like, he knew people that were doing music and that were doing, like, a lot of more serious level. And, I respected that. And I'm just like, do you have any recommendations? And then he, of course, he passed your name along.
Yeah.
And I used to sit on your beats page before I knew you. I think you were still living in Cincinnati, like probably 6 months or a year before you finally moved back. And I remember I was like, dang, like, this dude's beats are so raw. I'm like, I need to get like a beat from this dude. And like, didn't even picture ever like working with you like on a artist level. Cause I knew you were in Cincinnati and I didn't really know you that well, but I'm like, man, if I could just get like a beat or two off this dude, that would be dope.
Right. And that's how I met Swerve too, because I remember Swerve was like talking to me on like Facebook Messenger and shit and just like, hey man, I'm putting together this stuff. And I knew Swerve's. So Swerve, for the people that don't know, was our old DJ. So, he DJ'd for you, he DJ'd for
Swerve.
me back in the Swerve. And so Swerve's brother did not go to high school with me, but he was like in the same circles that I would run around
Bobby?
in. Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah.
And so he like hit me up. He's like, yo, I'm Bobby's brother, and I'm putting together this mixtape, and I'm looking for beats or whatever. And then so it was like around the time that I met Swerve is when I started. I was like, it was before I met you, but I was hearing about you because of Veeno, because of Nero.
Yeah.
And I remember you had the your logo was the Drew Carey, but it was your face or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was for my mixtape release show. That was for Riding Around the City. I did a birthday and mixtape release show at ROC Bar.
ROC Bar.
Yeah, that was a great night.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the Drew Carey logo, but I had like the tie and the glasses and everything. Like you could still like the smile was very like my buddy Matt did a really good job on that. Shout out to Matari.
Yeah, that was a sweet I still remember it, obviously. It was sweet.
People still bring that up.
It
They're like,
was
remember
dope.
you did that Drew Carey logo? I'm like, maybe I should go back to that.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, so then like you and I like after the beats or whatever for your album, then we just kind of fell into the same circle together because you were like down in Kent State a lot.
Oh yeah.
And then Swerve was down in Kent State. So
that's how I met him too, was through Brad and Marcus
Allenson Ward.
Yeah, I was recording with Brad then, and I remember he came through and wanted to just sit in on the session, I think, or something, and he was like, hey man, and he's actually the one that came up with Blue Collar Party, like one of my favorite songs I've ever made. I didn't even come up with the idea for it, but yeah, and then Danny London was on the hook, so that was a really dope feature. And,
yeah.
He was like, hey, I got this idea for this song. And he goes, I'm going to send you this beat. And I kind of wanted to be like, just, I think I'm pretty sure he pitched the idea of it being more of like a party type song. So I think he came up with like the Blue Collar Party. I may be mistaken on that, but he definitely pitched like the idea for sure. Like, but yeah. And then that was like when it really like, because he asked me to be on his mixtape, and that was the first time I had ever had anyone ask me like to be featured or collaborated like on like an actual like mixtape from like outside of someone I didn't know already, and like outside of like people that I'd worked with in the past. So that was like really cool. I'm like, damn, this dude barely knows me, and like I'm like, I must be doing something
Yeah,
good.
yeah, for sure.
And I think first time we actually met in person was at the, was it the Hip Hop Gives Back show at the Grog?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Me and Nero and Soul Crisis and my man D-Mac through that. Damn. Was it the year with DJ Drama, or was DJ Drama not
I
that?
think DJ Drama was the year before.
Okay, so it was Hip Hop Gives Back 2 then.
Wasn't I think MGK headlined that when he was still local, wasn't he?
Yeah, yep. That's just crazy because I remember that first year he was still in high school and he came and he was like, I gotta go because I got school like tomorrow, which is so wild to think. The
first year?
The first year, yeah.
Oh wow,
it's so wild to think about, but
it is, man. It's crazy how like, and it doesn't even like, it seems like far ago, but it's like it's weird. It seems like yesterday, but it also seems like an entire lifetime. Like,
yeah,
it's
real.
Weird. Like.
Damn, okay, so Hip Hop Gives Back was 07. So that means Hip Hop Gives Back 2. I'm assuming we did it the next year, so
it might have been 08 or 09, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Somewhere around there.
But it wasn't until like the ROC Bar days. So ROC Bar was a club my ex-wife ran in the East Bank of the Flats in Cleveland, and it was like the dopest venue because it was right on the water. It was big. The sound was always good in there, and there was just like killer shows all the time. And
I loved every show we did there.
I know, it was like we never really had a bad show. I mean, obviously I was there a lot. I saw a lot of bad shows, but the stuff we were on, like, no, it was always a good time. I was sad when that place closed, but
yeah,
a lot of good memories. But that's like, it was like you and PK that started KushNerds, right?
Yeah, Darren PK started the KushNerds whole like kind of like persona, and like, and I was like, man, it's kind of really dope. I was like, let's run with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we just kind of like started like hashtag KushNerds, on Twitter and everything, and it kind of like, took on kind of just like a growing of itself.
Yeah,
it was just something very natural because it's like I've always been down with playing video games. Like, I'm a huge like nerd at heart. Even though I'm a rapper, I consider myself a nerd at heart. But yeah. It was really cool to like feel like a part of something too, like part of something that like, because people we'd hear like, we drop it on the beginning of a song, KushNerds, and like we'd hear people say it at the show, and
right, yeah,
and it's cool to like to get that back, because like, you can have an idea and you could think something's cool, but it's like, when you get that back though, and other people tell you how cool, or they think that you're doing something really like dope or different, like. That feeling is just...
It's the best, yeah.
Through the roof, man.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. Crazy era.
Yeah, and those, that ROC Bar shows, I mean, that was, like, one of the only venues that actually, like, paid artists. Like, like, you got paid for other stuff, but, like,
especially back then.
Yeah, like, back then, like, I mean, it was just, like, you kind of had to, like, sell tickets if you wanted to make money, and you didn't really make too much off of tickets.
Or you had to pay to get on shows, pretty much.
Yeah,
so it was like back in the day, it was rough where you had to, like, sell a certain amount of tickets to even get a good spot. So, like, artists would just end up buying the tickets, And promoters would win because they were just making the money. But it was rough for some of those. But yeah, ROC Bar did pay. Now, since we've been back and I've been back like doing shows and everything, it's things have changed luckily in the city.
That's great.
People have been taking care of their musicians and everything, especially like the Foundry. They really take care of them. But yeah, what a time. What a time, man. So go ahead. Were you about to say something else?
I was just going to say, like, it's so important to the scene now. Like, I've been, out at, I've performed at a couple of your shows, and I've been out to some local shows, within the past few years, getting back into the scene. And it's just really cool to see the scene alive and well still.
Yes.
Kind of like, because I'm not going to lie, when I stepped away from making music, I fell out of touch with the scene. Like, not on purpose. It was just kind of like, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, I would guess. But, like, now that I'm like getting back into like, some of the local artists that are like making noise now, like there's a lot of great music in this city.
There really is.
It's awesome to see the venues taking care of the artist and, being able to help continue to do these kind of things, because you know it costs a lot of money to do this stuff. And
yeah.
Spotify doesn't pay that much.
No, yeah. If you want to be a musician, you gotta just love it, man. You can't be doing it to be rich or any of that stuff. If you're lucky, that will happen. What does Dr. Dre say on that one song? You know, some people get on, some don't. It's just the way it is. I don't remember what he says, but I mean, it's so true. Like, some people are really good and they just don't make it, and some people just do. But yeah, you really gotta love this stuff to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if people knew how much I spent on my album, you would be like, man, he loves this stuff, because I haven't seen that back. But
yeah, my bill's about to be coming up soon here.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, today we are here to talk about it's not a new song, so like this podcast is kind of like set up for anytime I'm releasing songs this year that I have a feature on it, and I want to talk to them about the song Deep Dive. But as I mentioned earlier, I put an album out last year, and I want to still kind of dive into those songs. And the only song that I have a feature on that album is with you, and it's called Control. And it's such a important song for me, and I know it's an important song for you. And people that have heard it, it's extremely important song for them. So just thought this would be the perfect opportunity to kind of dive in on this. I mentioned in the first episode with James that I was posting about the songs and behind the scenes on my Instagram stories, and it was just like people were really liking it, but after 24 hours it's gone. And I feel like some of these stories, especially this one, I would love for it to just be in the universe forever, because it's such a cool way that it all came together. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I guess I'll start with the beat for this song. So this beat is produced by Phenom. So shout
out to Fiends.
Fiends, what's happening? West 41st. All the songs on my album are produced by me except for this one. And so Phenom, I met him through Nero back in the day when I was in high school still. And he was like the only person I knew that made beats, and he was using Fruity Loops too. So that's
and he was doing it like way early. Like, I mean, he was doing it like in like probably, I think from what he told me, like maybe his freshman or sophomore year, I remember. And then like, he told me about the old ways they used to have to like go back and do that stuff. It was wild.
Yeah. So Nero, our buddy Nero, was DJing at the time, and so he was putting together a mixtape, and Phenom produced a lot of stuff. And I never ended up like doing music over his beats, but I just kind of knew him. You know what I mean? He was just there.
Right.
Then like didn't talk to him for a while, and then I started getting into the music scene, just like producing. That's when I was just producing for like Soul Crisis, and he popped up again. I'm like, oh, I know this dude. This is the dude Phenom, And he was producing for a bunch of like people in the city, and we just crossed paths, So then when it was time for me to record my album, Room to Grow, I ended up recording it all at his house, his studio, West 41st.
Yeah, that's right, you did.
And same thing. Every beat was mine except for one. So he produced the song Submissive on Room to Grow. So as I was working on this new album for Me, I was like, I need to hit Fiends up. I think that's how it went. I think I hit him up and I was like, hey, man, I keep this on the low, but I'm working on an album and I got to have like at least one from you on there,
Right, yeah.
So at the time when I told him that, I was going through some stuff, and I was like, I just needed to like work some things out in my personal life, And my therapist and I were kind of talking about how I need to do things on my own more and stop relying on like having fun with people around. Like, she was like, pretty much go out and do shit by yourself and watch. You can have fun,
And it's crazy you mentioned that, because like that's one of the biggest things that like I've learned too, is that like I go to the movies by myself sometimes. I'll go out to eat by myself, like I'll go for a walk in the park by myself if no one wants to go. Like, I played golf by myself. Like,
it's the best.
Yeah, like, and it's like you can't like sit around. I don't want to drag this on too much, but you can't sit around and like wait for like other people to have fun with you. Like, book a vacation, go on by yourself. Like, if you want to go somewhere, life is truly too short, and we all don't know how much time we have.
For sure.
I
got a friend, she takes herself on vacation like every other month pretty much. She just lives alone, has her killer ass job.
Dope.
And she just goes, I think she's going to Jamaica or something like next week. I'm like, oh my God. Did you just get back?
I've always wanted to go to Jamaica.
Me too.
It's kind of like up there on the bucket list.
Yeah. So like I went like ice skating by myself downtown, and I can't ice skate. So I was like shook. And then being there by myself was like scary, but it was awesome. So I think after I experienced that first thing, like, okay, I did this thing by myself. I booked one of those getaway houses, and it's like real small. Like it's probably as big as this room we're in.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was like on the border of like Pennsylvania and Ohio, and I took Harvey.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, so I took the dog, I took Harvey down there, and it was like -5 degrees, I think, when we were down there, because I took Harv for a walk, and his poor paws, I was like, I had to bring him back immediately. Yeah. But anyway, so it was about like an hour and a half drive, I would say, and that's when Fiends was sending me stuff. He's like, well, what have you done so far, So
right.
I'm like, I don't want to,
Yeah.
All right, here, just please keep this close to the chest.
Yeah.
So then he sent me like 50 emails with like 4 beats each in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I opened up my emails and it was just like fiends.
It's wild. Like I remember like going over there and like, going through his beats, and cause he had a couple of beats on, Myself As I Know, and we've, done other stuff on his, beats in the past. I'm trying to think if he was if one of his beats is on the follow-up or not. I don't think so, but definitely on Myself As I Know It, there was production on there. And I mean, the library, it's just
insane.
It's like endless.
Yeah.
You could sit there probably for 8 hours and just go through his entire like library.
And he's got like a style too, but he's also versatile in the same way where it's like you can tell, he has a certain style he likes to make.
Yeah.
But he can also surprise you and be like, oh no, I could do this too, and it's like fire,
100%.
Yeah. So I'm going through these beats while I'm driving, and they're all just good. I'm like, okay, this is sweet.
So when was this again? I just want to.
So this was like probably late January of 21.
Okay, so not long before I think you reached out to me.
Yeah, was that 21 or was that 22?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because.
Oh yeah, because I released the album I released the album in 23, so maybe it was 22.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I was just trying to get an idea.
I don't even know what year it is now.
Yeah, is it 20? It's 24.
Yeah.
January's gone already.
Yeah, so it was definitely like January, like early February.
Okay. Cool.
It must have been February. But anyway, so I'm driving, I'm listening to all these things, and then I get to Phenom, he names his beats like certain things, like categories.
Oh yeah.
So this category he had was like God. So it was like God and then the number, right? So God 72 popped up, and I put it on, and I hear that sample, that ooh, and I was like, oh shit, what is this? Because once I said before, sounded nothing like the other shit I had on the emails. And I'm like, all right, let's see where this goes. Then the hi-hats came in, and then the drums came in, and I was like, yo, this is like
those drums,
sick.
Man. Yeah, when those drums come in, like,
I'm like, this is so sick. So I like remembered God 72. Kept listening to stuff, and then ended up going back and listening to it again before I finished through the other ones. I was like, man, something about this beat, but like it sounded so different from everything else on my album, And I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? I'll just, whatever, enjoy my getaway. Have the getaway, come back home, throw that beat on again, just listen to it the whole way. And I texted Phenom. I was like, yeah, this is the one. Save this for me. No clue what I want to do yet, but save this for me. He's like, all right. So when I'm going to write to it, I had this concept, and the concept was control, because something that I've been struggling with for the past few years, and I still struggle with, is like having control over things. Like I feel like I didn't have control over my life for a while, and I want to like regain that control back. And so I started writing to it based off that premise, and it felt like I'd already said the stuff I was talking about on my album. Oh, okay, you're talking about this, you're talking about that. Well, you also do that in this song. You also do that in this song. I'm like, I don't want like a throwaway song or like whatever the case was going to be, you know?
Yeah.
So then I, you know, I'm skipping a part here where I got you on the song, but I'll get back to that part later. But when I ended up writing, I started making it political for a little bit too. Like, all right, well, how do we take our control back, you know, as a society and stuff?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I want to go there on this. So I just kind of like moved away from it for a little bit. And the one day I was having a real bad day at work, and I like came home to my apartment. Shout out to the apartment. Came home to my apartment, and then I was sitting in my truck like at lunch. And usually what I do is if I'm having a bad day, I pull out my phone and I scroll down all the way to the end. And the last text message I have is from my friend Kristen that I went to high school with, and who's no longer here. And I read it because like the last text message was like real long and like uplifting, you know? So I don't like, you know how like I have a problem with my phone where I like get too much storage, and it's like, here's the first thing you should do: clear out your text messages.
I have like text years back,
dude. I
too.
can't do it.
I'm terrible. I can't either.
Yeah, so it's like one of the options is like, oh, we'll just delete the old text for you when it's time to go, and I just don't do it because I don't want that shit getting deleted. So anyways, I was in there and I was reading the text from Kristen, and then I thought like it just hit me. I was like, what if I like talk about her? So Kristen passed away. She struggled with depression as long as I've known her. I knew her from high school, and she passed away by taking her own life. And it was extremely tough for me and a lot of her friends around her. And I was like, what if I wrote a song about experiencing losing a friend to suicide? Because unfortunately I feel like that's more of a common thing than not a common thing nowadays, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I could be wrong, but maybe it's just the company I keep around me, but I feel like a lot of people have lost somebody through that, you know, unfortunately. And I was like, this could be a good way to get rid of these feelings I've had about this situation, but also kind of shine some light on mental health too, where I say in the song, like, mental health is just important as taking care of your body, because it is. I think my therapist said this to me too, that if you're working out, you're going to the gym, you're dieting and eating well, you're taking care of your body, like your brain is also part of your body. Mm-hmm. And therapy is like a good thing to do to like take care of your mental health, you know? And that always stuck with me because it's so true. And unfortunately, just a lot of people don't or can't afford to, and that sucks also. But anyways, yeah, so I was a little iffy on writing about it because, like, you know, it's a touchy subject and it's a scary subject. But in turn, I ended up obviously going for that, and yeah, it was just you know, it was crazy. So like when I was married, I was like, we were living in North Olmsted at the time, and I was outside cutting my grass, and I came back in, and my ex-wife was actually friends with somebody who was friends with Kristen's father. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, her friend is friends with Kristen's father. So I came in from cutting the grass, and she just had this look on her face, and I was like, what? And then she was like, you know, your friend Kristen? I said, yeah. And she's like, she killed herself. And I literally, like I say in the song, dropped to my knees in the kitchen, and I was just so upset about it because we were supposed to grab food like 3 days later, you know?
Wow.
And it was something that, like I mentioned before, she struggled with for as long as I've known her. You know, we became friends in high school. She was like a grade younger than me, I think. But it wasn't until after high school that we kind of reconnected through social media and got closer. She was somebody I talked to a lot when I was living in Cincinnati too. And just became really close. And, you know, I've struggled with depression and stuff my entire life. And it was just kind of like the first connection I had with somebody that was like that. I feel like nowadays people are more open about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy how different the world is now than it was, even 10 years ago, but like when we were younger, it's insane.
Oh yeah.
But she was the first connection I kind of had with that. So yeah, that was really tough for me. But I'm glad that I had this song and this beat just kind of spoke to me about that, and hopefully it can raise some awareness because, everybody is going through something, everybody is struggling. You might not know it, but
Right.
it's always good to reach out to your friends. Royce the 5'9" says it, like, look after your close friend or your strong friends, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like super important because some people that are acting the strongest might not be feeling the strongest,
100%. And I've always been kind of like one of those people that like struggled with this stuff, but I never wanted to admit it, and I never wanted to be like, because like you said, the stigma around it has changed compared to like, back in like when we were in high school and stuff. Like back then, like, you went and got therapy, like people like made judgments about you, and like, people would maybe look at you as like, less of a person, or oh, he's crazy or she's crazy,
right?
Or, they're crazy, like. And it's such like an easy word to throw around. It's like, we're not crazy. Like this, I think Dave Chappelle said it best, like maybe the world we're living in is crazy. And like, but yeah, like it's crazy to like, think that, for so long people like kept that stuff bottled up. And, how many lives could have been saved, with therapy. And I'm glad that like you recognized that and you wanted to go that route. Cause I remember like you were kicking around a couple different concepts, and then you sent me this and I heard it. I'm like, all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he found it.
And I guess to go back, cause I said that I wanted the song to be called Control, and it's still obviously called Control, but for a different type of control. Instead of making a song of like wanting to get my control back, it's just, this is a song about things happen that are out of our control, and we wish that we could do something about it, and it's out of our control. There's bigger plans at stake here, and but you're not alone is what it comes down to. Even though it might not feel like you're in control, you're still not alone. And I guess now I'm kind of having this epiphany while talking about it. Like,
oh, wow. Epiphany moment.
yeah, it's kind of okay. I'm over here that I need to like get my control back and everything. And I feel like, I feel like itchy and shit when I don't have control over something. But here I am, like saying it's okay sometimes, you gotta trust in God or the universe or whatever's out there, and keep on keeping on.
100%. And we got such limited time here. Like I said before, it's like, why not make the most of it?
Yeah, and I mentioned in the song too that like I make sure that the people around me know that they're loved. And, me and my aunt have become extremely close, my mom's sister. Since my mom passed away, we've always been close, but now, like, my aunt has kind of, like, taken over my mom's role where I call her all the time, or she calls me. We're just always talking. We got really close. And she always says that if there's somebody in your life and it's maybe a situation that, like, isn't 100% healthy, or you see something happening to somebody, if something bad was to happen to them, where if they were to pass away, would you have any regrets that you don't want to have any regrets that you didn't try your hardest,
Yeah.
Did you do everything you could to try to help that person or whatever the case is? And I do feel like that with Kristen, and I try to live that way through my life with everybody. It's just like, I don't want somebody to pass away and me to have regrets that I didn't say something or do something for them, because like you said, life is too short and it's so stupid to be petty over dumb shit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've kind of like, tried to do is just kind of let that stuff, fall to the wayside. Obviously what I've been through, it gives you a different perspective for sure.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Not to toot my, horn or like, say that I, have a, terrible journey or my journey is worse than someone else's, not saying that at all. But like, it gives you a different perspective when something like that happens. And I wanted to touch on something earlier. You said, who made the quote about check on your
strong friends?
Your strong friends.
Royce the 5'9".
Yeah, Royce the 5'9". So like, I forgot who was it said like check on your happy friends too. Like, because a lot of times, and I felt like I did that a lot in high school, was I masked a lot of my like anxiety or depression with comedy. I tried to be like a funny guy.
Same.
And like, you know, like I try to like, if someone was trying to make fun of me because of my weight, I would be like, oh yeah, I am fat. Tell me something I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was yesterday's news. What's on today's paper? You know, like I would try to like, you know, diss them back. Like, you know, so like kind of like a defense mechanism.
What's
like,
on today's paper? That's
yeah.
funny.
Yeah. I don't even know why. I never even said that. It just like popped in my head. But yeah, like I felt like I did that a lot. And like I watched, I think it was an interview. It was like Bob Odenkirk, one of our favorites, Better Call Saul.
That's right.
He was talking about the last time that he saw Chris Farley, and just, you know, how everybody thought this dude was hilarious, but if you actually knew Chris Farley, like he didn't think he was funny. And that's so sad that a man that talented, that, you know, had he lived, he would have probably gone down as probably the greatest comedic actor of all time.
For sure.
But to hear that and like, you know, it's just so sad and it's so true. And like, you know, he masked all that with the comedy and the alcohol and the drugs and, you know, the partying and, you know, you got to really check on your happy friends for sure.
We were just talking about that. Me and RC3 were talking about Robin Williams.
Another one. Yeah. Great example.
Yeah. Like just would never have thought, you know what I mean? And it's, you just never know, man. You just gotta treat everybody, as cliche as it is, treat everybody the way you'd want to be treated. Because you just, sometimes all you need is just some love and happiness, man. I know it's the hippie mantra, but like for real,
it does so much though. Like
it does.
Just like, you know, walking in the supermarket, someone says, "Hey, how you doing?" or waves at me, like,
dude, changes
you
your
never
whole
know.
mood.
Yeah, like just like that.
It's wild. So going on to your verse, I'll do a little bit of introduction here, and I'll just let you tell your story because it is your story. So I don't normally have features on my songs. So like on my past album, Room to Grow, I had 0 features on it, and I was going into For Me with the same, same idea. The way I just looked at it was, if this is the first album I've made in 10 years, I want it to be all me saying what I need to say, you know. And I know we've talked, I've told you this story, but so I wasn't on social media for a while. I got off when I like stopped doing music and everything, and so I wasn't on Facebook, I wasn't on Instagram. And our mutual friend Sarah one night shot me a text and was like, "Have you talked to Veeno?" And I said no. And I knew, you know, we had talked prior to this. I knew that you were diagnosed with cancer, you know, all this stuff. And then I knew that it was, you were like kicking its ass and shit. And it was like, okay, yeah, Veeno's doing great now, you know.
I went like 4 years with no evidence of disease on my scans after chemo and surgery. Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it was for those 4 years, you know, it was, you know, it was, things were going really well.
Yeah, so like, you know, she's like, "If you talk to Veeno," like literally that was the last thing that was popping in my head. And I said, "No, why, what's up?" And she said he posted this on Facebook, and it was like, you know, your status of telling everybody, "Hey, just so you guys know, I want to keep you guys informed because, you know, it's family and friends on there," you know what I mean? And you're like, pretty much just said the cancer came back. It's a lot more aggressive. And then I think the thing that got me was you said something about whatever the treatment that I was doing might not help, but it will stop it. It won't get rid of it, but it will stop it from getting worse. Something like that, how you worded it. And for whatever reason, that like sentence just like fucking destroyed me, you know, because like I said, you're one of my favorite people on this planet, and you know, nobody deserves this, you know what I mean? But like, I was like, Veeno does not deserve this whatsoever. And there's been 2 times in my life that I've been pissed off at God, and one was my mom got diagnosed, and the second was reading that status, and it just killed me. And me and my friends, we play perfect segue. We play Sea of Thieves. We play Xbox once a week, and we were about to get on when I read that, and I texted Greg, who's like my best friend, and I said, hey man, like, I sent him the screenshots. I said, this is what's going on. Like, dude, I am in shambles right now. I'm not getting on for like an hour or something. I need some time, you know. And Greg was the one that was like, did you ever think about like getting Veeno like on a song? You know.
So he was kind of what, like, before, because I'm trying to think, that was probably, because I waited for a while. I found out, like, I want to say maybe 8 months before I actually went out on social media.
Damn.
Like, I had gone through, what, I'm trying to think. Yeah, because it was June 2021, and I think I waited for a while to post, because I waited till after my surgery, and then I was back on chemotherapy again, and, like, the thing I always struggle with, like, bringing people this kind of news is it's just, like, at first when, like, something changes in your cancer journey or, like, something is different, like, you know, you don't have a lot of answers right away.
Right.
So it's kind of, and everybody wants answers. Everybody wants to, hey, are you going to be okay? You know, how long are you know, you're going to have to go through this, you know, they want it to be over just as much as you do.
Right.
So that's the thing that I've always struggled with. And I learned, like, early on, you know, like when I first got diagnosed, and then when it came back, I kind of wanted to just, like, I told my immediate, like, family, but, like, to actually reach out and, like, make it public and, like, anybody can see this. Like, yeah, it was like it was almost 8 months after I had found out it came back, which was wild. It was actually found out during a hernia surgery. Wasn't showing up on any of my scans. I had a scan, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 months right before that, and, like, based on my initial diagnosis, the guidelines by the Cancer Institute or whoever makes them says I should get a scan every 6 months after I finish treatment. So that was the plan I was on, and I wasn't even due for a new scan yet, and I went in for the surgery, and they found it in my abdomen that had spread. So yeah, it was a lot to deal with too. Obviously that initial shock, it was like Groundhog Day. Like,
yeah,
it's funny to bring that up because it's a great comedy. I love it. And it was like, I remember just like, and I went into my doctor's office and I didn't even expect this news. Like, it was just a follow-up on my surgery and dropped a bomb on me. And it was like, damn, I'm back in like 2017 again. It was like all these old feelings coming back again.
And you told me that it was like usually, what is it, the rate when the cancer goes away, it's usually within the first 5 years or something, right?
Yeah,
and you were almost at that 5 years.
The 5-year mark is like where everyone that gets cancer like wants to hit. They want to get that 5-year mark of no evidence of disease on any scans, because based on studies, they say, you're less, you're basically back in the regular population of getting another type of cancer, or your cancer coming back, the same cancer. So, yeah, but the highest risk is within those first 5 years. So, yeah, and I was, year out, and it was just wild. It was kind of like, and it's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have like the most less aggressive stage 1 type of cancer. It's always in the back of your mind. You may not think about it every single moment of every single day, but like,
I'm sure anytime you go for a follow-up or whatever.
Oh yeah, like they call it scanxiety. So like you get like anxiety before your scans, like that's real. And like the one thing I'm part of, like, a cancer group based on, young adults. Gathering Place is a great place in Northeast Ohio that's helped me tremendously through my cancer journey. And the young adult group that I found through there, like, was huge. And, just being around other people and, that are going through what I was going through, it made me feel like not so lonely.
Yeah, for sure. And, we're friends, and our friend group is incredible support system.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I forgot where I was going with like the whole young adult thing, but yeah, it's huge to have like people that are, because like this is not uncommon. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because anytime I have a chance or an opportunity to talk about, what happened with me, I like to do that, just to raise awareness. And, like one of the people from my cancer group, his name was Alex Piercy. He passed away on New Year's Day of this year, from stage 4 colorectal cancer, and he was 25 years old. He came into our group in August of last year, 2022. So I've knew him for a little bit, about over a year, but I mean, it's just getting like younger and younger, and it's really something that, and I'm glad it's becoming more of a comfortable conversation, because like kind of like the mental health stigma, like you heard the word cancer 20 years ago, it's like, don't talk about it, don't talk, and like no one wants to like,
or two, people just thought death sentence immediately, you know what I mean?
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's so many cancer survivors now.
Oh, yeah.
Because medicine has gotten so much better, and, we're in Cleveland, which has one of the best cancer centers in the country, right?
I'm very thankful to be here where I'm at, because this is some of the best cancer care in the entire world. I've even went to like, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York for second opinions, and they've all said like, well, you can come here, but in your own backyard, you have like the best. Yeah. So, I'm very thankful at least to be in this position, to be like where I'm at, because I've talked to so many people that travel like hundreds of miles, hours just to come up for treatment. And I'm just like, blessed to be able to have that type of healthcare like close to home.
For sure. So going back to the song, so Greg was the one that was like, do you ever think about getting Veeno on something? And I was like, that's not a bad idea. Obviously, I don't know if he'd be comfortable. It's funny you just said that any chance you get, you'd want to talk about it. But like at that moment, I'm like, I don't know if you'd be comfortable to want to like.
But yeah, to kind of put a note in here though, I normally wouldn't have been, because I had stopped doing music, and
right.
Like if you had hit me up to be on like, hey, this is a random beat, here's a random song, and like even if it was like a party song, I probably would have been like, maybe not.
Right.
But like I think that like the concept, and then that like the way you just pitched it was like,
yeah. So I was like, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, what could I get Veeno on? And that's when I was like, oh yeah, Fiend sent me this beat. I'm like, maybe this could be good. And this was obviously, like I mentioned earlier, before I even wrote my verse, or didn't even really fully know what I wanted to do.
So you just had the beat then, yeah.
I just had the beat pretty much. But yeah, so I shot you a text and was like, hey, obviously we talked before that. I wasn't like, hey, read your post.
No,
want to jump on a song. We were connecting, and
we would always text each other like about the Better Call Saul episode from the previous night. Yeah.
So we had already had a discussion about what was going on, but I texted you and was like, hey man, like totally up to you. You don't have to if you want to, but just so you know, like if you want an outlet to talk about what you're going through, I have a beat for you or whatever. And where were you when I sent you that text?
I was actually sitting in my chemo room.
Crazy.
They were about to start bringing in the pre-meds, they give you before you get the treatment. And I sit down. I usually don't check my phone, like, because I have to go get my labs, get my blood taken, and then I have to go see my oncologist, and then they have to review my labs to make sure that my levels are okay for treatment. And then if that's all good, then I go to treatment. It's a very long process. But I try not to look at my phone during that time, just to kind of like, get into like the mind state of like, all right, we're getting treatment today,
Yeah.
So I sit down and like I pulled out my phone because I'm in my chemo room now, and, I'm just kind of chilling, I can't remember if my sister or my mom was with me. They usually rotate and, come with me to chemo. My angels, man.
Shout out to both of them.
Yeah.
I love both of them.
Yeah. I'm sitting there and I'm like 3 text messages, Brett Zupka, and I'm like, oh, he must be going off about something on Better Call Saul or something. And I'm like, 3 messages. So I like opened it up and there's like this really long one. And then there's like this other one. And then there's this audio file. I'm like, what is this? So I started like reading it and I'm just like, wow. And like at that time, you still hadn't like thought of like you kind of gave me an idea of what you wanted to do. But then like you said, you completely changed it. And, I was like, I thought for a second, and I'm like, do you really want to rap again? And I was like, kind of, but like I was still kind of on the fence. But then I saw that you said it was produced by Fiends.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well,
yeah,
I gotta at least listen to the beat. Like I mean, I've Phenom's production is like like you said, he produced for so many artists in the city. It's like I can't just not like give it a listen.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, just like you, when that sample came in, ooh, I'm like, oh man. And then the drums, and then like when the drums came in, I was like, oh man, like this is like I named it like God, it was God level. Like,
yeah, for sure. And then when that bass comes in too.
Oh, the bass, yeah. But yeah, and then like I'm sitting there and I'm like, I looked at my mom and my sister. I'm like, you won't believe this. She's like, what? One of them, I forgot which one it was with. I'm like, I might be rapping again. And they're still like, what do you mean? Because like I had no plans to like, I wasn't recording anything. And, but I was like, yeah, ZuP just sent me this beat. And, I think they were out of the room at the second, like when I played the beat and I played it and I'm like, and then, like, I remember you were like, hey, keep it quiet. Like, don't tell nobody. Like, because you were keeping the album very much quiet, too, still. You hadn't even I mean, you didn't even announce the album until,
yeah, there was, like, 5 people that knew pretty much at that point.
And, I knew who, like, knew about the album, but then they didn't know about me being on the album. So then
that was cool.
That was another layer that we kind of added in there to kind of trick everybody. And, yeah, when I heard it, I was like, man, like, I'm like, all right, well, we'll see what'll happen here. So kind of when I started, I'm like, where do I begin? Like I'm trying to like figure out like, like I've been through 2 surgeries at this point. I've been through chemotherapy going on almost a year. It was almost a year at that point. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, where do I begin? Like there's been so much to this like journey and so many like ups, downs. It's like we call it cancer roller coaster.
Yeah.
In our groups and stuff. But I was like, something just popped in my head. I was like, I remember laying in the hospital because like it just popped. I'm like, just start like at the very moment you found out you had cancer. And that was 2017. I went in with like abdominal pain. It wasn't even like, it was just over a weekend. I haven't even been experiencing it in a long time. Because a lot of times you hear people that like ignore symptoms and it's like, well, I didn't have any. So I, went in because it's like something ain't right. It was like 2 nights in a row. I couldn't sleep. I just had very bad abdominal pain. I couldn't, go number 2, not to be, gross, but like, I was like, well, this usually isn't a problem. So, but I was DDG. Like, yeah, DDG, hashtag doo-doo gang. But yeah, so I went into the ER. They, IV'd me. Went in. They did a couple scans, and by that time, my mom had came there. Thank God. But 2 hours into the ER, they came back and they were like, yeah, we found something, on the CT scan in your colon. There's a blockage, and it's either Crohn's disease or cancer. And I'm like, well, I never thought I'd see the day I'd be praying I'd have Crohn's disease.
Either way, it's not cool.
Either way, it's not cool. Yeah. Sorry, I like to make little jokes every now and then. It helps. It's one of my coping mechanisms. Hope people at home don't mind. But yeah, like, I was like, I remember laying in the hospital and I'm like, just sitting there. I'm like, how is this possible? Like I'm 30 years old. Like, got a great career, I feel like I'm just starting to figure out life. And I remember telling people like when it first happened, it's like when you're driving down the freeway, you're on cruise control, you're going 70 miles an hour, maybe 65 and you got the good tunes on, you're jamming along and all of a sudden there's just a huge traffic jam and you just have to slam on your brakes. Like that's exactly what it felt like, because your entire life just gets put on hold.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's kind of like how it started coming together. And, you know, I think I wrote the verse over like a couple weeks span. I think I recorded like half and I sent it to you like on my phone. And I was like, what do you think of this? And you're like, yeah, I kind of like where you're going. And then I kind of want to just end on like a good note, you know? So I'm like, but I got more in store. Like I got more things to do in life. You know, obviously, like, you know, walking down that corridor, I'm talking about walking down the corridor at the Taussig Cancer Center, you know, and, you know, another day, another cycle of chemotherapy. And, you know, I wanted to end on a good note and like just, you know, because it's a very, you know, emotional song. I was even texting people like family and close family and friends. I'm like, listen, like before you put this on, be sure you're not like driving or like, you know, like,
oh yeah, we upset a lot of people
operating heavy machinery. Cause cause, I mean, the amount of texts I got about like how, you know, like this song was so beautiful, but I cried my eyes out, you know? But yeah, like that was like, I'm glad I ended it that way.
Yeah.
You know, and I was talking about like, you know, a lot of stuff on there where it's like, you know, I'll fight until I can't no more. You know, I don't know how long this battle is going to be. You know, I don't know if it'll ever end. So, but just kind of provide like that good feeling at the end that like, hey, like we're in this together no matter what, like, you know, we're going to take this head on.
Yeah.
You
you were going through the motions. You were like, I got diagnosed. I have cancer. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'm being optimistic about it. And I'm just going to keep fighting because that's who I am.
Yeah. And like, so I've had a couple moments where, you know, we've had the recurrence and, you know, but when it first came back in 2021 and when I was first diagnosed in 2017, like those first couple weeks, like they were very dark for me. Just kind of like, you know, like that, you know, they talk about like heavy depression where you feel like an elephant's like sitting on your chest. Like that's what it felt like. And I'm like, okay, this is like the deepest like form of depression. And like, you know, I almost had to like motivate myself and like, you know, just little things like, hey, you need groceries, go to the grocery store, get out of your apartment today. Cause you know, I do say, you know, I like being alone and, you know, but there is that very isolating feeling when you're diagnosed, even if you know and you have a network of people that have cancer, have had cancer. Even with that support, when it came back in 2021, I still felt very isolated and like kind of that like impending doom feeling. And it's like, you know, and the one thing I always look back on is like when I first got diagnosed, I started thinking about everything like, you know, will I be around, you know, another year from now? Like, you know, what the treatments, and I like when I was laying in the hospital that first week, I was getting prepared for surgery. And I'm like, I think the night before was the morning of, I had kind of like the come to Jesus moment. And it was just like, look, dude, like you do not know what's going to be happening 6 months from now. You're worrying yourself about, you know, you're thinking the worst can happen when you don't even know what, you know, what you're facing at this point. Cause I hadn't even known the stage.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know, because this is before the surgery, before they moved it out and biopsied it. You know, took out lymph nodes too. That's another thing that they use to stage it, is they remove certain amount of lymph nodes. But yeah, it was, it was just seemed like an uphill battle. I'm like, look, you cannot climb a mountain in one day, at least a legit mountain.
Yeah.
So take it one day at a time, and you know, worry about 6 months from now, because you got a lot of stuff you got to handle right now.
Did that help by talking to yourself?
Tremendously. Yeah. And I always tell people that, like people that I know that are newly diagnosed with cancer, because it is a lot. I mean, and it's like every day you're waking up, you're making doctor's appointments, you're figuring out, you know, when you're going to have surgery, because the other thing too, chemotherapy, it's basically slows the healing process.
Right.
So most surgeries, you have to be off 6 to 8 weeks before and then after surgery for your body to heal. So that's the thing of getting that all planned out. And it's like, your mind is in a million places and you're just like, how the hell am I going to do all of this?
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but you find a way.
And I'm glad that you're talking about that, because you're right. You have the experience now. You've been through it, and if anybody is listening to this or whatever that could have just been diagnosed, like, you're telling them right out, hey man, I've been through this. Take it one day at a time. It's gonna be okay. This is all that stuff, and that's why I think places like the Gathering Place and all those things are such an incredible thing, because it is a support group for people to just know that they aren't alone or isolated. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. And I appreciate you saying this stuff to help anybody potentially out.
Yeah. I didn't even see it going like far down this path. Like, I wanted to touch on it maybe a little bit, but I'm glad I did too. And, the other thing I always like told myself is, like, even like if things, were worst case scenario, or if they ever become that, it's like, look, do you want to spend the rest of whatever days you have left, like, burying your head in a pillow and letting this, like, basically, like, just basically take over and, like, completely mentally everything, and then just completely shut down?
Right.
Or do you want to make the best of whatever time you have left here? And that's what really, like, once I got that instilled into my head, and what really did that for me, I'll share. I might have shared the story.
I think you did. I was about to ask you to share me the story. Share a story again.
So, it was when my cancer came back in 2021. I was about to start treatment the following week. So I think it was that weekend, me, my mom, and my sister went up to Presque Isle in PA. We just wanted to kind of get away from the day, and we've been going to doctor's appointments the past month, like every week, and getting everything figured out about, how we're going to start tackling this again. And we went up there, and, I like playing blackjack. So, I wanted to gamble a little bit, play some blackjack. Didn't win, unfortunately, but, like, we went up there, watched the horse races at the casino for the day. And then they have, like, up in Erie, there's like a really nice park, like state park. They have, like, I think 10 or 11 beaches on. But you can drive through it. Like, I think it's like a circle. Like, you basically come in, and then you can just basically, if you stay on the path, it'll take you right back out.
Oh, okay.
So, like, the beaches are just kind of spotted out throughout there. And we stopped at one point, and we were going to, like, just check out the beach for a second before we started going back home. And it's like summertime, the sun's starting to, get low. I'm like, damn, man, back to reality. Like, got to start, treatment again next week. And I kind of just started, like, feeling that, like, down, like, depressed feeling again. And I just had to go to the bathroom, and, like, for some reason, instead of me waiting to, like, go after we went to the beach, because we were just going to stop for a few quick minutes, I'm like, let me just go now. So I start walking to the bathroom. As I'm walking to the bathroom, this couple comes, like, walking by me, and they just looked at me and they smiled. And I looked at them, and they had these shirts on. They were matching shirts, like letters and everything. And it's like, you can either get busy living or you can get busy dying.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I haven't heard this story.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell the other one, though, if you bring that up. But yeah, that was like
that's literally what you needed. Like, that was a sign right there.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it was like, like divine intervention. Like,
yeah.
God came down and, like, made me, like, go that path instead of going to the beach, and, like, made sure I saw that.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, that, like, I was, like, shaking, and I tell everybody that, has cancer, that, like, moment,
yeah.
that's going through that hard time of, like, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Because there's a lot of that early on, for sure. At least with me there was. But what was the other story you were thinking of?
Oh, the Tony Soprano story you told me recently. The episode about the piano.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. About,
yeah, you got to tell that, because I just told that to Alicia, and she's like, he's right. He's right about that.
So, yeah. So he was, I think he was getting in a fight with Carm, his wife, and she's, like, arguing with him about, like, how, they always have to worry about, like, someone whacking him, or, like, the feds getting him. And she's like, there's always, like, a constant piano hanging over our heads. And, like, when's it going to drop, pretty much? That's very much like, living with cancer, and then even, like, post-cancer. I mean, it's just,
But he said, I survived this. I'm not even supposed to be here. So,
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Every day is a blessing, or not a blessing, but.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that part. Yeah, because that was another time that hit me, and he goes, Carm. He goes, I survived a gunshot wound. He's like, I'm already up.
Yeah, yep.
And I'm like, I look at that too, because I easily could have not gone in 2017. I almost went to CVS and bought like some X-Lax, and I was like, oh, I'm constipated. I just need to, clean my system out. And like, had I done that, who knows, like how sooner I might have got that, how later I might have got those symptoms again. And,
right.
Had I not gone in for hernia surgery in 2021, who knows how long it would have gone unnoticed on scans, because scans can only pick up so much,
right.
Of a certain size. So that's the other hard thing of like, scans are like the best thing, but they don't show everything. So that was like, and I remember I was like kind of debating putting off my hernia surgery to the end of summer, because I was like, I don't want to be, worried, because I have to have the recovery for like, 6 to 8 weeks. And, it was right at the beginning of June. So it was like right at the beginning of summer. And I'm like, and I remember talking to my dad about it, and he's like, just go get it over with. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Dad's always right.
Yeah. Yep.
Shout out to Dad. Made a good
Love
call
him
on
too.
that one.
Yeah. Before we start wrapping stuff up, I just want to say too about the song. So I didn't tell Greg, who's my best friend, who came to all my studio sessions and recorded them, like filmed them. And I didn't tell Brad, who was recording us, that you were on the song. And it was crazy because the week before I had a studio session, and he was like, Brad was like, hey man, like, how's Veeno? Have you talked to him lately? And I was like, fuck. Because I knew you were coming the next week. And I'm like, oh man, he's good. Yeah, I talked to him. I don't remember when, but yeah, he's doing all right. He's like, yeah, man, I really need to hit him up, and maybe we should like go golfing sometime. I'm like, yeah, you should hit him up. Yeah.
Meanwhile, like we already had that
session booked.
Yeah.
And Brad didn't know what I was recording. I'd just come in and be like, all right, here's the beat, or here's the track outs. This is what I'm doing, So he had no idea what was being recorded the next day or the next week. And then me and Greg are sitting in my truck. I got the video, and I've posted online, but you just like open up the back door. You're like, hey, what's up, guys? And Greg's like, holy shit. He had no clue.
Yeah.
And then Brad, when he came up, he was like, oh my God, he was so happy. Everybody was just so happy to see you. And then
that was like one of my favorite sessions.
I was about to say, what did it feel like to be? Because I'll tell you, my first session for recording again, which was Fingerprints, I was so nervous to be back in the studio again after 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, how did it feel for you, especially how vulnerable this verse was? How was that? Like, oh, here's this verse that's super vulnerable, and I haven't been in the studio for...
Oh, by the way, yeah, here's my 8-year coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
Party.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very, very high end of emotions. I'm not gonna lie, when I first started writing the verse, like, I would start crying. Like,
I could imagine.
I'd get like 1 or 2 bars, put together, and then I'd go back and I'd like make sure it all sounded good, and I'd start crying again,
Yeah.
But like, and I'm like, I was just like, you just got to get through it, dude. Like, just get through it. So I did. And then, I think leading up to it, like the week out, I was starting to get like a little nervous, but like, it wasn't too nervous. Like the day of like driving there, I was like, oh man. And I think the secret added more to it because like help. Nobody else knew besides me and you. I remember like just thinking like, man, that's going to be so cool to like be in the studio with Brad again, because Brad did all my mixing and mastering on Riding Around the City, on the follow-up, and on Myself As I Know It, and other singles that I've done. Like
right.
Brad has been my go-to guy for recording, mixing, and mastering, like pretty much all of my time that I was like doing my solo stuff. So that was like a very like kind of like, what do we call it? Like kind of like full circle moment, just kind of like us getting back in the studio. But yeah, when I first got like, walked in and sat down, I'm like, it was a really, it was a dope setting in there. Brad had a really nice vibe. So it was a real comfortable setting and a lot of open space. So it was like cool. And like, it kind of just felt like old times again. Then I got in there and put the headphones on, and then, he had the little control, thing where you can control the volume and how loud the beat was and whatnot. And if you want to do any fade or anything. And, you know, I'm just like, I remember that at the old studio. So it kind of felt like a little familiar. And then like, as he starts playing the beat, I'm like, oh man, it's like,
it's happening. Yeah.
Like here it is. Like, yeah, I start to get like, you know, and I remember just going in and like, I remember we just normally what we would do, and normally I'm probably assuming what most artists do is they do like a rough take just to get the levels and stuff, and then kind of go for like what you actually want to like, you know, put forth towards and make it like a complete verse. And I remember like I was so nervous, and then like at the end, Brad stops it. He goes, "Well, looks like Veeno still got it."
Yeah,
and,
I remember that. I remember that exact moment.
And that made me really like feel comfortable again, because like I said, you know, like, you know, early on before I started taking this seriously, I struggled with confidence and, you know, my music, and, you know, just kind of like, hey, I think this is cool, but does anyone else think this is cool? And eventually I got to the point now where I'm like, I'm just gonna make something because I think it's cool. But that was like a moment for me, because I was like, man, like this is the first song you're gonna be on, and like so many people over the years have been like, hey, you're making music still? When are you gonna make music again? You know, you probably went through the same stuff. Like, so that once I did like my level check, it was like, all right, game on, let's go. Like, but yeah, a lot of emotion, a lot of like, just a lot, man, because we've both been through so much like in our personal lives outside of music, and like, you know, stepped away from music, and then to come back again, like, you know, it was really cool. And I feel like that a lot of people like really received that well.
Yes.
And that, like, you know, was just like, man, this is like, I remember like my friend Roz texted me, and she was like, I just want to let you know that like this is really cool, and I'm so proud of you and Brett for doing this, and you know, you guys took on a very like challenging subject for both aspects. And she goes, I just want to let you know it means a lot to a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
And I was like getting so emotional like when just reading that text, and I was like,
dude, that first like day when the album came out, I was seeing so many Control posts and just like lots of people like, damn you, Veeno, yeah, I'm crying now, posts and stuff.
Oh yeah.
It was just, yeah, you're right. It's just a beautiful thing. And to go back to what you just said about us taking years off without doing music and not knowing what to expect. And this goes back to what you said earlier about the scene right now and how accepting everybody is in the Cleveland music scene. And
for sure,
the type of love that I've received and you've received since being back from people that definitely did not know who we were 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're just like all about it now is a blessing. And to know that we stayed true to ourselves, and that's what's the most important thing to me. Like you said, if I would have hit you up like, hey, let's do this party song, you know, like, no, your comeback was something meaningful. It had a message. It was therapy for you, and it was therapy for people listening to it. And I couldn't ask for anything better than that. You know what I mean? That's personally why I make music, you know?
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, before we go, is there anything that you'd like to say? Like, you got anything? Is that it? You done with Control, or you got anything else coming up?
No. We are very much in the works. My album Recurrence, I want to say as of today is about 60% recorded. I got to do the math. I'm not good at math, but
me neither.
Pretty good portion of it's already been recorded, and we're working on the album. Got some production from you on there, and Chris DeCola, and I'm very excited. It's something I've been working on, and just to kind of like touch on like how I got back to making the album, because we didn't even touch on this, was you'd sent me the beat for Welcome to the Circus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like out of nowhere. We hadn't even talked about like me doing another album or another song or even another verse, and you were just like, hey, I know I was going to throw this on, you know, my project when I was starting to like, you know, figure it out, but it didn't end up really like having a sound that I wanted to go with. Like, you know, I wanted to go in a different direction. You're like, but if you want, you know, this is yours. And I'm like, all right. Let's see what we can do. And I would do that like usually once a year. I'd write like a verse. I'd like an industry beat or something, like something I thought was like just hard. I'm just like, give it your best 16.
Yeah, you know? Let's see if I can still got it.
Yeah, and so then like I'd write it. I'm like, all right, I still got it. So then like I put that first verse together, and I'm like, all right, like let's go. And then we kind of just snowballed from there. We started, planting, to make the album, and yeah,
Beautiful.
Don't have an official release date yet, but it will be out this year. It'd be called Recurrence, and
I've heard all of it so far, and it's all gas. It's fire.
Well, thank you, sir.
Where can they find you? Excuse me. Where can they find you on social media?
Oh yes, the socials. Yes,
unless you don't want them to find.
No, that's fine. Yeah, come find me. Veenograms on Instagram. So just Veeno and then GRAMZ. Veenograms.
And if you got Twitch, this man likes to stream on Sundays.
Yeah, I was gonna say Twitch TV and then /Hams Corleone, HAMZ, and then Corleone like Don Corleone. I stream every Sunday and play The Last of Us, and I usually do pop-up streams every now and then. And then Twitter is just Veeno Hams or X. Throw up the X. It's Veeno Hams, VEENO, and then HAMZ. So you can find me on there. I mostly post most of my stuff like music related on Instagram, but I share on, X every now and then.
Yeah.
But, that's where you could find me. You could find me, my album, Myself As I Know It, which I released in 2013. You can find that on all streaming platforms, especially Nowhere to Go, one of our singles. You can find This Man on there too. And then, I'm excited to finally be putting out a full, complete project again.
Me too. I think people are really going to love it. And especially the people that have been riding with you from day one, they've been waiting for it. So
yeah, like you said, it like coming back, and it's just like these people that still cared about your music are still here.
Yep.
Like they didn't go anywhere.
And that was my biggest fear. And it was like, nah, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But well, thank you, Veeno. I appreciate you. I love you, brother.
Oh, thank you. Love you too.
Yeah,
man. Appreciate you having me on here.
Of course. And just know, on a serious note, you are not alone. Whatever you're going through, there are people that you can talk to, and that there are people out there. You might not feel like it, but people out there that love you, and reach out. Just reach out, and check in on your strong friends, your happy friends, your sad friends. There's no reason anybody should go through anything in life alone. So just be good to each other, love each other, and that's what I gotta say. And the drumming is starting now in the building we're at, so we're gonna get out of here. Thanks again for listening to the Featured Presentation Podcast, and I'll see you next time.
Later.